Our movie opens with a text introducing the audience to a seemingly idyllic America in the year 2022. And this text talks about how amazing things are now. I mean, it is 2022, we don't have Trump anymore, so yeah, but in this movie, it talks about how there is low unemployment, low crime rates, but there is a caveat. There's a purge. The purge being once every year, people get to go out and do whatever they want to do. I'll explain a little bit about it later. And the text also acknowledges the new founding fathers of America for sanctioning this annual event and allowing people to purge and cleanse their souls. And this sets the scene for our movie, and we are first shown images of the purge depicting people engaging in a myriad of violent and deadly acts. We are then introduced to James Sandin, a wealthy salesman who's accumulated a great deal of wealth by selling home security systems designed to keep families safe during the purge. And as James drives home, he takes a phone call with a client called Mr. Falk and assures him of the quality of his product. Then he calls his office, and his secretary, Sue, informs him that he's actually making a lot of sales. And he looks overjoyed by this news, cause who doesn't love making a lot of money? Come on. And along the way, James also speaks to his neighbor and another client, Mr. Callie, and it becomes clear from their conversation that James is a successful salesman who takes pride in his product's ability to protect clients during the purge. And the scene then transitions to James's home, with the annual purge looming only an hour away. And Mary, James's wife, welcomes him home, but she can't help but implore him to do something about their daughter, Zoe. And Zoe seems to be sulking a lot these days. And Zoe's constant sulking and moodiness comes from her family's disapproval of her boyfriend, Henry. Henry happens to be a few years older than her, and her family doesn't really like that. And when Mary mentions this to James, he just tells her that she just needs to get over it. Come on. And as James departs, Mary watches Dr. Peter from Johns Hopkins on TV, explaining the significance of the purge and why we need to kill each other once a year and just murder and mayhem. That's just so necessary to the human condition. Anyways, meanwhile, in Zoe's room, she and her boyfriend Henry are making out, but their intimate moment is cut short when Zoe realizes that her father is home, and Henry jumps off the balcony and leaves after sharing a very loving kiss with Zoe. And shortly after, Grace, one of the neighbors, arrives with a basket of cookies, and she shares Mary some gossip she's heard, revealing that the Sandins' home extension was actually funded by the security system that James sold to almost the entirety of the neighborhood. And then they part ways, wishing each other a safe night. And then we see Mary being startled by her son Charlie, who shows her his bizarre baby-faced moving robot. And he excitedly shares the improvements he's made to it, and he appears worried about the upcoming purge. And Mary comforts him with reassuring words. And later, during a family dinner, their father shares the good news that his division came on top for sales. And the family chats until the clock interrupts them, signaling the start of the purge lockdown. And the family surveys their village through a security camera while their father secures the house. Cause it's now the time to purge. Get it? Everybody's about to kill everybody? Yeah. And suddenly, an emergency broadcast voiceover on the TV explains that the government has instituted the annual 12-hour period called the Purge. And during this time, all criminal activity becomes legal except for level 10 government officials who have immunity and must remain unharmed. I mean, of course, the government's gonna watch its own ass. I mean, come on, what did you think was gonna happen? And also, the usage of weaponry above class 4 is forbidden. That means I don't think you can use a bazooka, but you can just use firearms. Yeah. And all services, including emergency services, will be unavailable until 7 a.m. And the message concludes with a blessing for the newfound fathers and the country. And as the emergency broadcast ends, alarm bells ring out, signaling everybody who wants to purge and letting them know that they can just start purging. And as the purge begins, Zoe asks her parents if she can retreat to her room. And Charlie takes this opportunity to inquire why his parents don't participate in the purge, and James explains that they're privileged and wealthy, and because of that, they can just afford to sit out the purge. And Charlie appears to be confused by this, and he just leaves the room. And meanwhile, Zoe discovers that Henry has sneaked inside her bedroom before the lockdown, and they begin making out, cause, they're teenagers. strangers. But Henry suddenly stops and explains to Zoe that he wants James to bless their relationship, and he believes that he cannot be thrown out of the house during the purge, so he wants to take this as an advantage and convince her father. And as the purge continues, James works on some paperwork while monitoring the events via video monitors. And Mary tries to distract herself with a light workout while Charlie uses his robots to access the surveillance room and check the camera monitors. And a bit later, the robot is left alone in the lounge, and Charlie notices a bloody stranger outside the house, and he's begging for help. And Zoe tries to stop Henry from reaching her father, but he is determined to convince James of his love for his daughter. And Charlie runs to the room and deactivates the security system, and he lets this stranger in. And James intercepts the stranger with a gun, and Henry also gets to where James is, and he opens fire on him. Apparently, he's hoping to eliminate the obstacle between him and his girlfriend Zoe. And in the confusion, the stranger escapes and hides within the house, and James ends up shooting Henry. And Zoe runs off with a fatally wounded Henry, and she watches him die in her arms. And meanwhile, James puts Mary and Charlie in one of their apartment rooms, and he goes off in search of his daughter and the stranger. And as the night progresses, the stranger that the family is hiding from is discovered by a group of masked individuals. And the leader of the group approaches the door camera, and he requests the family hand over the stranger as they were informed of his presence by James's neighbors. And he assures the family that he's not interested in hurting them, even though he legally can, but he just wants the stranger and he wants to purge him. He wants to, basically, you know what purging is at this point, yeah. And this masked person tells them if they refuse, they'll break inside the house and they'll kill everyone once their provisions arrive. And as they wait outside, the power goes out, and James confesses to his wife that their security system was not meant to actually stop people from getting in, but was actually supposed to act like a deterrent. And the family is now left to fend for themselves against the impending danger. And James then shares his plan of finding and handing over the stranger to the group waiting outside. And Charlie, his son, objects and fears that the stranger might be killed. But James explains that they have to choose between saving themselves or the stranger. And the scene then shifts to James, who's frantically searching for the man in the house, and meanwhile, Charlie, using his robot, finds the stranger hiding behind a sofa. And Charlie uses the lights on the robot as a signal, and he leads the stranger to a secret hiding place. And afterwards, James is called to the front of the door by the leader of the group, and the leader warns James again. But James tries to explain the situation, stating that it's his son who let the stranger in, and that they're unable to find the stranger now. But the leader doesn't believe James, and he assures him that they will break in once their tools arrive. And while the group is planning their next move, Zoe talks to Charlie via robot and accidentally stumbles upon the stranger in Charlie's secret hiding spot. And the stranger holds Zoe at gunpoint after taking Henry's gun from her, and he tells James that he's not gonna die and he doesn't deserve to die. Even though it's the purge and technically everybody potentially deserves to die. Moving on. And at that moment, Mary arrives from the back and they manage to put the stranger down as Zoe faints in the process. James and Mary find a tape and they try to tie down the stranger, but as they try to tie him down, the stranger fights back. James wrestles with him and his wife uses this letter opener to stab him in his wound until he loses his strength. And finally, they tie the stranger to a chair in preparation to deliver him to his own attackers. And Mary is starting to realize that what they're doing is kind of wrong, and she's very hesitant to cooperate. And despite James's attempts to get her back, she remains firm in her decision. And meanwhile, Charlie runs off and Mary goes after him. And as Zoe wakes up, James apologizes for, shooting and killing her boyfriend, and he assures her that they'll be alright. But Zoe tells him that what they're doing is completely wrong, and she leaves. And the stranger, now wrapped in tape and tied up on a chair, manages to get his tape-wrapped mouth free, and he sadly tells James to take him outside and save his family because, this guy cares. If I was the stranger, I'd be like, I don't care. I don't want to die too. That's what I would say. And when he tells him that, James apparently has had a change of heart. And as Mary continues her search for Charlie, she sees the purgers outside putting chains on the barricades of the house. And James shows up and tells her about their change of plans. And suddenly, Charlie appears from his hiding spot and James hands him a gun. And he explains to the pair that they will try to fight the purgers instead of handing over the innocent stranger. And the leader of the purgers informs the family that their time is up. and the Purgers successfully break into the house, and the family now are forced to defend themselves. And James kills the first Purger who tries to attack Charlie, and then he kills the next one in the hallway. And then he wrestles and fights 3 more Purgers, 2 men and 1 girl, and he manages to kill all of them. But James is eventually stabbed by the leader, who asks him whether the stranger's life is worth more to him than his family. And the leader then pronounces James purged, and the Purgers continue to wreak havoc inside the house. And when the Purgers find Mary, neighbors come to her rescue, and they kill the 2 Purgers who were about to harm her. And Mary finds James, who's struggling after being stabbed, and Charlie joins them. And as the 3 hold hands, the leader of the Purgers appears, and he aims to shoot them down. And Zoe, standing on the staircase, shoots and kills the leader, saving her family's life. And as the family catch their breath after surviving the night, their neighbors suddenly arrive and they take out the remaining Purgers. And Mary expresses her gratitude, but apparently the neighbors had something else in mind. And they reveal that they actually want to kill James and his family. And this is actually motivated by their hatred towards the family's newfound wealth, and because they believe it was built upon their own struggle. And James is then taken away and declared dead, and the rest of the family is tied up. And the neighbors encircle them and they prepare to carry out the purge ritual. And as Grace, one of the neighbors, is about to strike the first blow, Charlie's robot passes by, and just in the nick of time, the stranger arrives to rescue the family. And the stranger takes out Mr. Callie with his handgun, and he threatens the remaining neighbors. And they are left with no choice but to untie the family and let them go free. And the family is relieved and grateful as they make their escape, and they know that without the stranger's intervention, they would not have survived the night. But technically, they wouldn't be in this situation if he didn't actually get inside their house. But you know what, let's just move on. The stranger points his gun at them and he gives Mary a choice. Either kill her neighbors or let them go. And despite Grace's desperate plea for death, Mary chooses mercy considering too many people have already died today. And she commands everyone to stay put and wait out the rest of the night. And as the group sits awkwardly in a room, waiting for the purge to end, Mary watches her kids tend to their father's wounds. And as the night wears on and tensions rise, Grace becomes increasingly unhinged, and in a sudden fit of desperation, she lunges at Mary, aiming to take her down and steal her weapon. However, Mary is no easy target, and she reacts with lightning-fast reflexes, pivoting out of Grace's grasp and expertly deflecting her attack. And with one swift movement, she brings her gun down really hard onto Grace's skull. And Grace falls on a nearby glass table, and trembling and bleeding everywhere, Grace slowly rises to her feet as she and the rest of the surviving neighbors and the stranger leave the house and walk away as the sirens blare outside, signaling the end of the purge. And Mary thanks the stranger before he departs, and in the closing scene, Mary, Zoe, and Charlie stand at the gate, watching as they hear the sounds of approaching ambulances and helicopters. And the audio from a television broadcast of the American morning news program starts, and the news states that this purge was actually the most successful one with a record number of murders. And that is how the purge ends. And I'll see you guys next year. Maybe I'll do another Purge movie. Leave a comment in the comment section if you want me to do the other Purge movies. And remember to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.